Good morning, fishy friends. I hope you're all having a wonderful start to the day. Looks like we're having a great start over here, as usual, with excellent water clarity. This water's on its third day. It's perfectly fine. Look at those bubbles. Nice and small and pretty much disappearing right away. The fish are just absolutely stunning. And I think even those little angelfish have grown in the few days they've been in here. I can see some size difference on them already. One of them's going faster than the other, the left one there. They're liking that north fin. They're liking that north fin. What are we going to discuss today? I think I'm just going to talk about fish keeping in general. And in general, I mean the way it's been for decades versus the way it is now. And, you know, ultimately, fish keeping's always been about a box, right? And the interesting thing about boxes is you're not meant to think inside them. You're meant to think outside them. And there's been a shift. There's been a shift in outside the box thinking. There's just not enough of it anymore. People are generally all thinking inside the box now, and what I mean by that is they're all kind of thinking the same. And the hobby's evolved from being an outside the box thinking hobby to a brain dead, do what everybody else says you should do hobby. And the way they sort of safeguard their mantra, so to speak, is when anyone speaks out against it, they'll come back with, well, there's 101 ways to keep fish, and God, all the excuses are the same. So that's one of them. Then the next one will be is, well, your water is not the same as my water in my city, which is a little bit true, but actually it's not very different. There can be differences. You could be on a well, but if you're on city water, you're on city water, and you're dealing with all the same chemical problems, and so on. And the other thing you'll often hear is they'll start throwing the word natural around as if it means something when it comes to an aquarium. It doesn't. It's a misnomer. And they use language to make their idea sound more quote unquote natural, and by saying it that way, any alternative idea is clearly suggestively unnatural, which is another crock of absolute crap. Okay. So, we live in a time where language and narratives are twisting everything into the twilight zone. And this has become very true for fish keeping. So, they'll all tell you there's 101 ways to keep a tank, and they'll all keep 101 different types of fish. But then when you look at their fish room, every single one of their tanks is done up the same. What I mean by the same is they've all bought into the mantra with putting in 3 or 4 times more substrate than you need, and you're losing 20% of your tank to it right there. Okay. Deep substrate is really it's a time bomb, is what it is. And any old school fish keeper will tell you that. I mean, even under gravel filters, they're great, they work, they'll keep you going for about a year, but if your substrate is so thick that you can't clean it, okay, it's just a matter of time. Even if you had some manner of under gravel filter, I think now they're trying to call them plenums, whatever. What you're doing, you're pulling all that dirt down deep into your substrate, and you're creating, you're creating an anoxic zone under the substrate. But there's always going to be something someday that comes along and kicks up your substrate for some reason. Okay, now you can try and avoid fish that do that, but it could be a dead plant, and you pull the roots out. That's all. It's just something simple as that, and then your whole tank gets sick from doing that. It's a different way to do things. It's one of the 101 ways, I guess, but it's a time bomb. It's a time bomb. Anyone who has a lot of experience with undergravel filters like I did when I was a child, you'll basically run them for about a year, maybe a little longer. And even if you kept your gravel shallow and you got down there and you were able to, suck the dirt out of the grates, which is the best way to handle those, undergravel filter, shallow substrate, and then you're able to get your gravel vac down there and put it straight on the grate for the undergravel filter and suck out what's underneath it. Now, if you can behave that way with an undergravel filter, you can actually make it work, and it'll, go for a long time. But a lot of people don't do that. What a lot of people do with an undergravel filter system, or these plenums, or now these new, half a tank full of substrate systems, is they're just letting the stuff sit there and rot. So even if you had an undergravel filter, well, one, there's too much substrate for you to effectively vacuum anything. So you're not going to get the gunk out. And that will. It's a time bomb. You're waiting for it's gonna screw you over. It's gonna make your fish sick in the long run. You're gonna tear down that. You're gonna need to pull your fish, tear the tank down about a year, thoroughly clean everything, put it back together. Bring the tank back up, put your fish back, and hope they don't die. And you can't do that with sensitive fish like discus. You just can't. Okay, or really any cichlid. If you're putting a cichlid in a tank with thick ass substrate, you've drank the Kool-Aid. That's what you did. You drank the Kool-Aid, and it's just a matter of time. Your tank is going to have massive problems, and it's probably going to take about a year to a year and a half, depending on the size of your tank, your water volume, and so on. And the problem with FishTube is we're all, if you speak outside the mantra, and I've proven this past few weeks, okay, they come for you. They're like, no, no, no. And then you start hearing all the same, they start regurgitating all the same crap, 101 ways, and my water's not the same as yours, and, I don't use the same filters as you, or blah, 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 blah. And so, they just try to wishy-wash it all away with saying, well, everybody's different, every tank's different. And that all sounds fine and dandy, but not every fish is different, and not every fish is the same. And swamp tanks, as I call them, are really only good for small fish. Planted swamp tanks, or thick substrate tanks that are basically, meant for aquatic botany or aquaculture instead of keeping fish. Those tanks will not suit large cichlids, ever. I don't care what anybody says. That's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. You try to run discus in a tank like that, like some people are suggesting you can do just fine. They're lying to you. You're going to run out. You're going to spend hundreds of dollars on fish just to watch them wither away and die. That's what's going to happen in an environment like that. Now, the best way to keep all fish in your box that is not natural and will never be natural, okay? And because it's not natural and will never be natural, what you should be aiming for is clean, sterile water, okay? We have these fish in captivity. Now, if human beings were being held in captivity, right, adjacent to a forest fire, and there was all kinds of smoky smog in the air, hurting your lungs, you're going to turn into a grouchy SOB real fast. And that's what happens to these fish. You fill up the water column with bacteria, and that's what happens in those tanks, is you get they call it a biotope. It's soup. It's watery soup filled with bacteria, and it's just, all that bacteria is not friendly to your fish. If it's floating in your water column, it's bad for your fish, and it's going to tax their health. And that's what's happening. That's what's happening with FishTube. FishTube is teaching people to do that to large cichlids like these, sensitive cichlids like these, and telling you that it's perfectly a-okay. If you're running a cichlid tank, okay, these quote unquote natural tanks that they're trying to pitch to you so that you can buy a $30 jar of mud and mix it into your substrate so they can make some money. These folks are setting you up for failure. Just take a look at their tanks from video to video. I set one of those up. Yeah, I actually did it in 2 different ways, and there's videos there just to show you that no matter what you throw a fish in, sure, it'll live, sure, it'll adapt. They sure as hell won't live very long, and that's the problem. It's not a suitable environment. It's never been a suitable environment. It's great for plants. If you're into aquaculture, then great. You're doing the thing you love. But if you're fooling yourself into thinking you can drop large cichlids into a tank like that, well, you're simply just fooling yourself. And they fooled you. You fell for the Kool-Aid. You decided, hey, let's drink it. And it's the fish. It's the fish that suffer first. Your wallet that suffers second. And that's it. And it's the hobby that suffers third, because then you'll quit. You'll quit because you thought you were doing it all right. And everything is going to hell on you. Because all these people said it would be okay. I wasn't worrying about biology in my water column for probably the first year I was keeping these fish, and I was taking losses left, right, and center because of it. I had to medicate every few weeks because I wasn't compensating for it. And I wasn't compensating for it because everything out there told me that this was my biotope, and it's okay. It's not okay. You want clean, sterile water. And that's how you'll get the best results and give your fish the best life that they could possibly have. So there's my, there are 101 different ways to do things. There's also 101 different ways to make sure your water is clean and sterile. Find one of them. Get away from this swamp crap. It's just not the way. Thanks for watching. Hope you all have a great day.